Hi everyone, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpening. In this video, I'm going to show how I like to do boning knives. I'm going to show it on the 1x30s because that's what I use for doing boning knives. I'll show you on the Toolcker, but I'm also going to show you on the traditional Harbor Freight style 1x30s. So you can skip around if you need to. I'm going to start first with the Toolcker, and then I'll go to the Harbor Freight model. And it just real quick wanted to touch on something, just so people understand that I'm a one-man show in here. It's a one-man operation, and yes, even like right now, you might think I have a camera guy because the camera's following me, but I don't have a cameraman. The camera that you're seeing me on right now is a webcam that's artificial intelligence webcam, and it acts like a cameraman, so it follows me around. Now, the downside of that is that it's not perfect. It doesn't always get everything right. It does have a remote control that I can control sometimes, but a lot of times the remote control loses control and it doesn't work. So that can be annoying at times. And it's not the greatest camera for filming exactly what's going on. So sometimes I have to jump to other things. If I'm really looking for really great quality, I'll use my Sony camera. Sometimes I use my iPhone, which produces really great stuff. But there are challenges to shooting in my shop. This isn't a studio. This is a sharpening shop. So yes, if I had a studio, which some channels have, like the Tormac guys out there, they have a sharpening studio for filming what they're doing. I have a sharpening shop, and I occasionally make videos to try and help people out, and so that you guys can see what's going on in a real functioning shop. But with those challenges come a bunch of things: sound, video, not having a camera guy. So there are times I accidentally stand in front of the camera. This video that I'm going to release on boning knives, I have tried to shoot several times, but because of the angles I have to get and stuff, I have ruined the video many, many times by accidentally not realizing I was blocking the camera. So I do the best I can. I hope you guys can understand that and maybe appreciate the fact that, this isn't a photo studio, no camera guys. It's what's going on, and I do the best I can to work around the gear. And I am literally at times, for the videos, when I say working around the gear, like it might be right in the way, and I'm like twisting my arm and trying to get in here and show you what I'm doing so that you're getting a good angle. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but that's what goes on in the shop. And like I said, the other challenge is also sound. With the different cameras, you get different sounds. Some of them sound better than others. I also live on a main road, so there's always traffic stuff going by. I got neighbors. Inevitably, my one neighbor's landscapers always show up in the middle of a video. These are just things that you deal with when you shoot at your house or do something in your own shop. So that's all. Just wanted to share that with you all, and I hope you enjoy the boning knives and fillet knives video. Okay, so ideally, my favorite situation is to work on something like this Toolcker here. It is going edge trailing, so the belt is going away from me. And in this situation, I am actually using a smaller belt. And I've talked about my belt splitter before, so I can split belts and make all kinds of custom size belts. But I will use even a smaller belt for this, for doing the curve. And the curve is sharpened, as some people have asked. Now imagine this is a bone. The reason for the curve is so that you can put that curve up against a bone if you're trying to get the meat off of there or to clean something off of the bone. That's what the curve's for. It's so that the knife can go right down a bone. That's the purpose of a boning knife, and to work around the bone and be able to stay on the bone without slipping off. So how do I do it? So I like to be edge trailing, so belt's going away, and the first thing I like to do is start correcting and working in that curve. And I will come right up here on the top, and I start going right in this curve, just like so. And I will keep doing that, just like all our other sharpening, until I feel that I'm starting to raise a burr in that curve. Now, this one, which is a Wusthof that I have in my hand, this is a 6-inch Wusthof boning knife, is not in bad shape. But I'm going to get right in there and just start working that curve, and literally pushing right into that belt. And that's how I start working a boning knife. I always start by correcting the curve and sharpening that curve. And it might take a while for you to get a burr going. Going edge trailing, you will see it. You'll start to see a little shiny part on the edge there. And as you see that, you get that good burr, then you can go to the other side and then start refining that burr and doing the same thing. Now, once I've managed the curve, then I'll move on to the rest of the knife. And that, you don't have to do edge trailing if you don't want to. You can go back to edge leading, just stay away from the curve. I have tried it before, and I'm just going to tell you right now, if you try and sharpen the curve going edge leading, you're inevitably going to cut your belt in half at some point. You can get away with it a lot of times for a while, but eventually you will catch that belt and you're going to cut the belt and ruin your belt. So it's just not worth doing. And I always save my old belts mostly for doing things like this and for doing serrated knives, as I've mentioned before. So now, let me just show you how I would do this on a typical like Harbor Freight 1x30, and we'll move over to there. Okay, so here we are on the Harbor Freight 1x30, and it's not a whole lot different here. It's just same thing. You want to make sure you're going edge trailing. So if you have a converted one like I did, just make sure the belt's going up and away from you, or if you use these flat like some people do, or turn it around, make sure the belt is going away from you. You can use a full-size belt. There's no reason why you can't. I do like, as I've shown before, I like the smaller split belts. The nice thing about using a split belt or a smaller belt, gives you a little more control, and you don't tend to accidentally ever hit a handle, which can happen especially when working on bolsters a lot. If I'm thinning out a bolster area, I really like smaller belts because that's where I have accidentally hit handles before. So just to show you real quickly, same kind of thing. I tend to come on the side quite a bit, on the angle of the belt, and I just start working right in that curve. And these, if you're using Trizac belts like me, they are flexible, and they have no problem with getting a little bend like that. And then I'll just come right to the other side, and same thing. And I'm looking for that little bit of a glint where I know I'm starting to see that burr raised up in there. And that's how I work the curve of a boning knife. Now, keep in mind, if you're like me and you sharpen edge leading most of the time, edge trailing takes a lot longer time. It takes a longer time to raise a burr, and it takes a longer time to just do everything when you're going edge trailing as opposed to edge leading. But it will keep you from cutting your belt. And sometimes you really have to, now if you need to get a little more pressure and you need a little tighter, you can come up top here, a little bit closer to the wheel is another thing you can do to get in there. And like I mentioned earlier, you will at times really see these chewed up and in bad shape. And if you want, you could finish out the rest of this knife the entire way going edge trailing. And that's just, you know, doing like you always do, going until we feel that we have raised a good burr. And yep, I got a good burr going there. And then I can just come down here and go the other way. And then do my stropping in the end. Now, what I like to do a lot of times is, I've mentioned before, I'll just do the curve this way, and then sometimes I will switch back to edge leading, because I just like edge leading trying. And what I'll do is I'll come right up to the edge of this curve, but where it's still all flat, and I'll just do this like I would do any other knife. I'm just not touching that curve because I don't want to cut my belt. And this is actually my favorite way. And you can see, look how beautifully even that bevel is. And that's why I like using angle guides. Now, some people like freehanding. I don't have anything against it. Some people are really good at it. I don't consider myself to be a great freehand sharpener. I like guided sharpening on just about any kind of sharpening I'm doing. Whether it's Tormek, I never freehand on my Tormek, and I don't like to freehand on my 1x30s either. Yeah, and that is really nice and sharp, and it's all the way sharpened down into that curve. Now I still need to hone this, but this is in good shape. So that's another way to do it. If you don't have a Toolcker, you can definitely do it on a traditional Harbor Freight. Like I said, just be careful and make sure that you're doing your curved portion edge trailing, even if you go back and do the rest of it edge leading. Let me show you one other thing. I'm going to grab, I think I have another small belt here. Yeah, here's an older small 600. Some of you might find it useful too. You could take your angle guide off if you want a little bit more room to work. Is an option. I'm just going to reverse this. But I'll just show you here. This is also why it's nice, you can see, to have a smaller belt. You can really get in there and work that boning area. If it needs some additional work. And like I said, I often see them where they are not looking nice and are kind of chewed up in there. And you know, since we have it here, I'll show you. It's also great for if you need to thin out a bolster area. As I showed you, I don't have to worry. If it's a big long belt, I have to be careful not to hit my handle. But if I have to thin this bolster a tiny bit, I can get in there and really do some precision work without having to worry about hitting some part of the knife that I don't want to hit. And I can just get in there and do that and really clean that area up. And it's not uncommon also to find these to be a little too fat back here. Sometimes they do need a little thinning because they're often just not sharpened properly. It's not uncommon that I find them to be a little too fat. in that boning area, in that curve with the boning knife. Now I'm just kind of thinning that out. So this one was a little thick. Yeah, and that feels real good. And now I'm just going to do my normal stropping. Okay, now, is there an exception to every rule? Of course there is. And can you actually do it edge leading? And I'm going to tell you, you can. But this is one of those where I'm going to show you how to do it. But you will be taking a little bit of a risk that you could cut your belt. So you'll see I'm going edge leading. But if say you don't have a converted 1x30 and you can only sharpen going in one direction, and you're in an upright position like on a Harbor Freight like this, and you have to go leading edge, if you get in nice and tight and go right up against your platen, and I'm saying, like, and you guys have seen my videos before, so if you have an angle guide, make sure it's converted, make sure you're as close edgewise as you can, and that your belt is up against the platen. I'm going to show you that, yes, you can actually work in this curve and not cut your belt, but it's always a risk, but I'm going to show you it can be done. Alright? So I can get in here, and you can see I'm right in that curve. Now, if you try and do it slack belt up top, I guarantee you will cut the belt. So don't do it. Just don't do it in the slack belt portion. But if you have no other way, and you want to use the angle guide, if you carefully go in there and very close to the edge where it starts to angle and go up against that belt, you can do it. Alright? So I just showed you, and you'll see it works really well. It'll give you a beautiful edge. But there is the slight risk of cutting the belt. You never know what it's going to catch on, and it might catch. So just know that if you're going to do that, and that's why I say save your old belts. And I see, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, there's a little shiny portion here that I don't like. And I'm trying to work that out of that edge there. And I'm just being very, very careful, doing a little bit at a time. I am using some pretty decent pressure. But yeah. And that's, you know, so this is the, yeah, don't do it, but you can do it kind of thing. And I'm showing you that, yes, can you get in there? Can you work that area? You can if you're real careful. Now, and it'll give you a nice looking bevel and into that curve. And it'll come out really sharp. Now, this is a 1200 Trizac right here. I'm just going to finish this up. But yeah, the one thing I would definitely warn you against is don't do it in the slack belt portion. If you're going to do it edge leading at all, if you really need a lot of corrective work in there, or because your 1x30 doesn't go both directions, you can get in there and you can work it, but definitely use the support of your angle guide, the back platen part of that angle guide to get it in there, and just know there is that risk that you might cut your belt. Okay, so for stropping, I'll usually come over to my my leather wheel, and I will get right in that curve area, and then I'll strop the rest of my knife like I would normally. Now, since it was somewhat done edge trailing, I find that edge trailing burrs can sometimes be a little harder to get off than edge leading, in my opinion. So I will sometimes even hit something on something a little bit more aggressive, like this paper wheel. Yeah, that feels really good. So I just got in a little bit right in that curve with the paper wheel to make sure that I got all of that burr removed. Okay, and so your final step, just get in there, and after you've done your stropping, make sure that that knife is cutting well in that curve. And you can see this is really cutting beautifully. It's just push cutting right in that curve. Yeah, so that's just doing a great job. So that's how you do a boning knife.